How do you think slavery started?
He was never taught how it started. I know very little about the slavery, slave trade.
Why do you think it's not taught in school?
Because people don't want to know the bitter truth.
So, what do you guys know about the start of slavery?
Not much.
Not much? Okay. Well, we're going to learn about it. So, there were basically three main people that started slavery or played a role in the start of slavery. The first one is Mansa Musa. Have you guys ever heard of him? He was the ruler of Timbuktu, and he was Muslim, so he decided to take the Hajj to Mecca. And so he went from all the way in West Africa to Mecca, and along the way he had gold and was kind of just giving it out, and it sparked all this interest in Timbuktu, kind of how the interest in the lost city of Atlantis today. It's just like, oh my gosh, where's Timbuktu? I want to go. So by the time he made it all the way to Mecca and back,
Mansa Musa, he was from Africa.
Right.
yes,
He was an African ruler
Yes.
who was infatuated with Mecca
yes,
and brought all of his
like brought thousands of
and
people, gold.
on a
He was
on
like
a,
a chief.
He was a ruler,
on a
yeah.
journey to Mecca.
Mansa is like king, means like king.
Yeah.
So
He was like king of Africa, and he brought the slaves over, and then
well, he didn't bring. He just brought.
he brought his people over.
Yeah.
And when he got to Mecca, they saw this, and they were like, "Well, we want some of those
Gold
riches."
and yeah, all because I mean
And
he
the-
brought.
and the-
There was so much gold that he actually caused inflation in other countries. Years later, this guy named Prince Henry the Navigator, he heard about Mansa Musa, and he's the Prince of Portugal, and he'd heard about it years later, and he was like, well, I want to know what's going on in Africa. So he funds all these expeditions to go down to Africa, and then they bring back, gold, plants, and they end up bringing back African people and bringing them back to Europe. And they were the first African servants. And Prince Henry the Navigator starts kind of a trend. Created a market for African slaves. And the third person was Columbus. And he inspired colonization in the New World. And because he lived in Portugal, slavery had been around for almost a century. Slavery was already a big thing, and so basically he made the connection from Portugal to the New World, and then 1492 is when he sailed the ocean blue. In 15 no, but I had a point. In 1500, basically that's when the first slave ship came over. So it was not too long after he made the connection between Portugal and the New World that the first Portuguese slave ships. So it was in 1324.
Okay.
Prince Henry was in 1415, and then 1492 was when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Yeah. And then the first slave ship arrived in Brazil in the early 1500s, so a couple years after Columbus. That was directly had to do with Columbus. And then the first boat arrives in the USA with British settlers and slaves in 1619
So the first slaves came here in 1619.
in Jamestown.